The shouting started before sunrise. "Come back here, useless girl." The harsh voice echoed through the small courtyard as Mamura ran barefoot across the dusty ground. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her hands trembling as she clutched an empty clay pot. She did not stop running until she reached the narrow path that led to the river. Only then did she slow down. Tears blurred her vision as she dropped to her knees near the quiet water. The morning sky reflected on the surface, calm and soft, so different from the chaos she had just escaped. "Why did you leave me alone, Mama?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Mamura hugged the clay pot tightly to her chest. Her shoulders shook as tears fell silently into the river. "You promised you would never leave me, but you did." The river flowed gently, carrying her tears away. For a moment, everything felt still, as if the world itself was listening. Mamura was 19, yet her life had already been filled with more pain than most could bear. Since the day her mother died, near this very river, nothing had ever felt safe again. After her mother's death, her father remarried quickly, following an old village tradition. He married his late wife's sister, Salima. At first, Mamura believed things might improve. She thought her aunt would care for her the way her mother once had. But that hope disappeared within days. Salima's kindness was only for show. In front of neighbors, she spoke softly and smiled sweetly. She acted like a loving guardian. But inside the house, her words became sharp as knives. "You are just like your mother, weak and useless," Salima would say almost daily. From morning until late night, Mamura worked without rest. She woke before dawn to sweep the yard, cook meals, fetch water, wash clothes, and carry heavy firewood from the forest. If anything went wrong, even something small, she was blamed. If food burned, it was her fault. If a cup broke, it was her fault. If Salima was in a bad mood, it was still her fault. Mamura's father saw everything. He noticed the bruises on her arms and the exhaustion in her eyes. He heard the insults, yet he said nothing. Instead, he spent most evenings sitting outside with a bottle in his hand, drowning himself in silence. His quietness hurt Mamura more than Salima's cruelty, because silence felt like abandonment. Every evening, Mamura found an excuse to come to the river. It was the only place where her heart felt a little lighter, the only place where she could speak freely without fear. She believed the river carried her words to her mother. "Mama," she whispered softly, staring into the flowing water. "Today, I almost collapsed while carrying wood, but no one cared." Her voice trembled. "Papa doesn't even look at me anymore." A cool breeze brushed against her face, like a gentle hand wiping away her tears. Mamura closed her eyes, imagining it was her mother's touch. "Sometimes I wish I had gone with you that night," she admitted quietly. "At least then, I wouldn't feel this alone." The river suddenly rippled. Mamura opened her eyes quickly. The surface of the water shifted in a strange, slow circle near her feet. For a brief second, she felt as if someone was watching her from beneath the surface. Her heart began to pound. "Mama," she whispered hopefully, but the water returned to normal just as quickly. Only gentle waves remained. Mamura let out a shaky breath and filled her clay pot. Perhaps it was just her imagination. As she stood and began walking back home, she did not notice the faint shimmer that moved across the river behind her, almost like a silent promise. Far away, inside the small house she dreaded returning to, Salima stood by the doorway, watching the path. Her eyes narrowed when she saw Mamura approaching. "There you are," Salima muttered under her breath. "Always running to that river." Something about Mamura's calm face unsettled her. It was too peaceful, too different, and for the first time in many years, Salima felt afraid without knowing why. That night, the moon hung low and pale above the quiet village. Silver light spread across the river, making its surface shimmer like glass. But beneath that calm glow, something stirred. The water began to ripple slowly, forming circles that widened and deepened. A faint light rose from within the river, soft yet alive, as if a hidden presence had finally awakened after years of silence. Far away, inside the small mud house, Mamura slept on her thin mat. For once, her face looked peaceful. No fear, no tears, just quiet rest. But in the next room, Salima tossed and turned restlessly. Sleep would not come. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt as if someone was watching her. A strange heaviness pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. She sat up suddenly, her heart racing. The room felt colder than usual. "What is happening to me?" she whispered to herself. A faint sound reached her ears, not from inside the house, but from outside, from the direction of the river. It sounded like distant whispering carried by the wind. Salima shook her head quickly. "It's nothing," she muttered. "Just the wind." Yet fear slowly crept into her heart. Meanwhile, at dawn, Mamura woke before sunrise as always. Her body still ached from yesterday's work, but something inside her felt lighter, almost hopeful. She quickly finished sweeping the yard and went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. As she carried a stack of clean plates, her hands trembled from hunger and exhaustion. She had not eaten properly in 2 days. Suddenly, one plate slipped. It fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. The sound echoed through the house. Salima stormed into the kitchen instantly, her face burning with anger. "What was that?" she shouted. Mamura stepped back, her heart sinking. I'm sorry," she said quickly. "It was an accident." "Accident," Salima repeated sharply, stepping closer. Her eyes flashed with something darker than anger. "Just like your mother's death was an accident," she snapped without thinking. Silence filled the room. Mamura froze. Her breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" she asked slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. Salima's expression changed immediately. Panic flickered across her face as she realized what she had said. "I said nothing," she shouted quickly. "Clean this mess and stop asking foolish questions." But Mamura's heart was already pounding. For years, she had been told her mother slipped into the river and drowned. A tragic accident, nothing more. Yet Salima's words did not sound like someone speaking about an accident. They sounded like someone hiding a secret. Before Mamura could speak again, Salima struck her across the face. The force sent Mamura stumbling backward. "Stop staring at me like that," Salima yelled. "You are nothing in this house. You hear me? Nothing." Something inside Mamura finally broke. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not only from pain. They were from years of silence, fear, and unanswered questions. Without another word, she turned and ran. She ran out of the house, across the yard, down the dusty path, faster than she ever had before. Her feet carried her straight to the river. When she reached the bank, she collapsed to her knees, sobbing loudly. "Mama," she cried, "I can't live like this anymore." Her voice echoed across the water. "Tell me what really happened to you." The river grew strangely still. The wind stopped blowing. Even the birds fell silent. Then slowly the water began to rise. A soft glow spread across the surface, brighter and brighter. The river swirled gently, forming a shape made of light and flowing water. Mamura lifted her head, fear and hope mixing inside her. The glowing shape slowly took the form of a woman. Familiar, gentle, impossible. "Mama?" Mamura whispered, her voice shaking. The figure stepped closer, formed entirely of shimmering water and soft light. "My child," the woman said warmly. Mamura's eyes widened with disbelief. Tears streamed down her face as her heart recognized the voice before her mind could understand it. "Mama, is it really you?" The glowing woman smiled sadly. "I never truly left you," she said. Mamura crawled forward, sobbing. "I thought I was alone all these years." The river spirit reached out gently. "You were never alone, my daughter," she whispered. Behind the trees, hidden in the shadows, a pair of frightened eyes watched everything. Salima had followed her, and what she saw at the river that morning made the blood drain from her face. Hidden behind a thick tree, Salima covered her mouth with trembling hands. Her entire body shook as she stared at the glowing figure standing before Mamura. "No, this can't be real," she whispered to herself. But it was real. The river shimmered with a soft, living light, and within that light stood the spirit of the woman she thought she had buried forever. Her sister. Salima stepped back slowly, fear crawling through her chest like ice. She wanted to run, but her legs refused to move. At the riverbank, Mamura knelt before the glowing figure, tears streaming down her face. "Mama, I missed you so much," she cried softly. The spirit of her mother smiled with deep sadness and love. "I have watched over you every day," she said gently. "Every tear you cried reached me here." Mamura's shoulders shook. "Why didn't you come sooner?" she asked. "Why did you leave me alone with them?" A soft breeze moved across the water. "I never left you by choice," her mother replied quietly. Mamura looked up quickly. "What do you mean?" Before the spirit could answer, she glanced toward the trees. Her glowing eyes narrowed slightly. She sensed something, someone, but she said nothing yet. Instead, she placed a gentle hand on Mamura's head. "You must be strong, my child," she said. "The truth is heavy, and not every heart is ready to carry it." Mamura swallowed nervously. "I am ready," she whispered. "Please, tell me what happened that night." The river grew quieter. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Behind the tree, Salima felt her heartbeat pound so loudly she feared it would give her away. The spirit's voice lowered. "Many years ago," she began softly, "your aunt and I walked to this river together." Mamura listened closely, her hands trembling. "She told me she felt lonely," her mother continued. "She said life had treated her unfairly, that she had nothing while I had everything." Mamura's chest tightened. "I tried to comfort her," the spirit said. "I told her she was not alone. I told her she would always be my sister." The glowing figure paused. Pain flickered across her face. "But envy is a dangerous seed," she whispered. "When it grows in silence, it turns into something dark." Mamura's breath caught. "Mama, what are you saying?" The river's surface darkened slightly, ripples forming like restless memories. That night, her mother said slowly, as we stood by the water, I turned to leave. Mamura's heart pounded harder with every word, and then I felt hands push me from behind. Mamura gasped softly. The spirit closed her eyes briefly, remembering. I fell into the river, she continued. I called her name. I begged for help. Tears of light formed in her glowing eyes. But she did not save me. Behind the tree, Salima's knees nearly gave out. She grabbed the trunk for support, her breathing uneven. No, she whispered silently. At the riverbank, Mamura covered her mouth in horror. Aunt Salima? The spirit nodded slowly. Jealousy had filled her heart for many years, she said. She believed my life should have been hers. She believed removing me would give her everything she wanted. Mamura's tears fell freely. All this time she lied? Yes, her mother answered gently, and the truth has waited in silence ever since. Mamura's body trembled with anger and grief. She hurt you, and then she hurt me too, she whispered. The spirit touched her cheek softly. My child, do not let hatred grow inside you, as it did inside her. She said, pain should not create more pain. Mamura nodded slowly, though her heart felt heavy. Suddenly, a twig snapped behind the trees. Both mother and daughter turned toward the sound. Salima froze. Her eyes widened with terror as the glowing spirit's gaze locked onto her hiding place. Come out, the spirit said calmly, but her voice carried a quiet power that made the air tremble. Salima stepped forward slowly, her face pale and shaking. Mamura stared at her in shock. Auntie, the spirit of the river rose slightly higher, the water swirling around her feet. So, she said softly, after all these years, we finally meet again. Salima collapsed to her knees. Her secret was no longer buried. Salima fell to her knees, her entire body trembling. The ground beneath her felt unsteady, as if the earth itself rejected her presence. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Only dry, broken breaths escaped her lips. Before her stood the glowing spirit of the woman she had betrayed years ago, the sister she had pushed into the river. Miriam, Salima whispered weakly, using the name she had not spoken aloud in years. The river surged. Waves rose higher behind the spirit, swirling with a quiet but powerful force. The once peaceful water now felt alive, aware, watching. You remember my name now? The spirit asked softly. Her voice was calm, but beneath it carried a deep sorrow that felt heavier than anger. Mamura stood frozen between them, her heart pounding wildly. Her eyes moved from her aunt to her mother's spirit, struggling to process everything. Auntie, she whispered. Is it true? Salima squeezed her eyes shut as tears slipped down her cheeks. I didn't mean for it to happen, she stammered. The wind suddenly grew stronger, whipping through the trees. The river responded, rising and falling like a living heartbeat. You planned it, Miriam's spirit said quietly. Her glowing form moved closer, water swirling at her feet. Salima shook her head desperately. I was angry. I was lonely. Everyone loved you, she cried. You had a husband, a child, a home. I had nothing. Her voice cracked under the weight of her confession. I only wanted one chance, one moment where life chose me instead of you, she sobbed. Mamura felt tears burning her eyes again. So you took my mother away? She asked softly. Salima looked at her with guilt-filled eyes. I thought if she was gone, I could take her place. I could finally be seen, she whispered. The river roared louder. Instead, Miriam said gently, you created years of suffering. Her voice was not cruel, only heavy with truth. You did not only take my life, she continued. You took this child's happiness. You filled her days with fear and loneliness. Salima covered her face, sobbing uncontrollably. I know, she cried. Every day since then, I have felt the weight of what I did. Mamura watched silently. Part of her felt anger. Another part felt pity. Years of cruelty could not be erased, but seeing her aunt broken like this stirred complicated emotions inside her. Suddenly, distant voices echoed through the trees. Villagers were approaching. Some had heard the strange roar of the river. Others had seen the unusual glow from afar. Within moments, several villagers reached the riverbank. Among them, Mamura's father. He stopped abruptly when he saw the scene. Mamura standing by the water. Salima collapsed on the ground, and a glowing figure rising from the river. His face turned pale. Miriam, he whispered in disbelief. The spirit turned toward him slowly. You believed it was an accident, she said softly. He staggered forward, tears filling his eyes. I searched for you. I mourned you, he said weakly. Salima let out a broken cry. I lied, she screamed suddenly. It wasn't an accident. I pushed her. Gasps spread through the gathered villagers. Silence followed, heavy and stunned. Mamura's father fell to his knees, his face collapsing in grief and shock. "All these years," he whispered. The river began to calm slightly, as if the truth itself had eased its restless energy. "Truth does not stay buried forever," Miriam said gently. "When spoken, it frees what has been trapped in darkness." Salima remained kneeling, her head bowed. "Punish me," she whispered weakly. "I deserve it." The spirit looked at her for a long moment. Then she spoke quietly. "Your punishment is the life you must live with what you have done." A soft but powerful wind passed through the riverbank. "When dawn comes," Miriam continued, "you will leave this village and wander until your heart understands the weight of envy and cruelty. Only then may you find peace." Salima nodded through tears. She did not protest. Mamura stepped forward slowly, her heart heavy but calmer than before. "Mama," she whispered. The spirit turned toward her with warmth. The truth had finally been spoken, but their final goodbye was still to come. The sky slowly brightened as dawn approached. Soft golden light began to spread across the horizon, touching the river with warmth. The storm within the water had finally settled. Everything felt calm again, almost peaceful. Mamura stood near the riverbank, her eyes fixed on her mother's glowing figure. She knew the moment she feared was coming. Her mother's spirit would not stay much longer. "Mama," Mamura whispered, her voice trembling. Miriam stepped closer, her expression gentle and full of love. "My brave child," she said softly. "You carried pain for so many years, yet your heart remained kind." Mamura wiped her tears quickly. "I survived because of you," she replied. "Even when I thought you were gone, I still felt you with me." The spirit smiled warmly. "I was always there," she said. "Every time you spoke to the river, I listened." Nearby, Mamura's father remained on his knees, overwhelmed with regret. Tears streamed down his face as he struggled to speak. "I failed both of you," he said brokenly. "I should have protected my family. Instead, I chose silence." Miriam looked at him calmly. "Regret can destroy a person," she said gently, "but it can also change them." He lowered his head deeply. "I will spend the rest of my life making things right," he promised. Mamura glanced at him, unsure but hopeful. Meanwhile, a few villagers quietly led Salima away from the riverbank. She did not resist. Her face was empty, her steps slow. Her punishment had already begun, a life carrying the weight of her own actions. Mamura turned back to her mother quickly. "Mama, please don't go yet," she whispered. Miriam stepped closer and cupped her daughter's face gently. "My time here is ending," she said softly. "The truth has been spoken. My spirit is finally free." Tears rolled down Mamura's cheeks again. "What will happen to me now?" she asked quietly. A soft smile touched Miriam's lips. "You will live," she answered, "not in fear, but with strength." She pointed toward the far side of their old house. "Behind the hut, near the mango tree, there is something buried in the ground," she said. Mamura frowned slightly. "What is it?" "Before I died," Miriam explained gently, "I saved what little I could for your future. Coins, jewelry, enough for you to start a new life when the time came." Mamura's eyes widened with emotion. "You thought of me even then?" "Always," Miriam whispered. "A mother's love does not end with death." The river began to glow softly again, as if preparing to take her back. Mamura stepped forward and hugged the glowing figure tightly. "I love you, Mama," she cried. "I love you more than words," Miriam replied, kissing her forehead. For a moment, time itself seemed to pause. Only a mother and daughter existed in that space, holding on to each other after years of separation. Then slowly, Miriam stepped back. Her form began to dissolve into soft light, blending with the river's gentle flow. "Be happy, my child," her voice echoed softly. "Live the life I always wished for you." And then she was gone. The river returned to its quiet rhythm, flowing peacefully as if nothing had happened. Mamira stood there for a long time, staring at the water. But this time, she did not feel alone. Days later, she dug beneath the mango tree and found a small sealed pot her mother had hidden. Inside were coins and simple jewelry, enough to begin again. With her father's support and the villagers' kindness, Mamira slowly rebuilt her life. She started a small craft business using her mother's saved jewelry pieces and skills she had learned over the years. For the first time, her days were no longer filled with fear. Yet, every evening, she still visited the river. She would sit quietly by the water and smile. "I'm okay now, Mama," she would whisper. A gentle breeze would always answer, soft and warm, like a loving hand resting on her shoulder. And the river would continue to flow, calm, peaceful, and free.